And good evening. And unfortunately, we're running about 10 minutes late. And most of that was research, to be honest with you. So it is kind of what it is in this situation. Unfortunately, that kind of thing happens. Um, anyway, last night, I wanted to kind of cover, or not last night, last Friday, I wanted to cover kind of what happened with the party. And while this isn't necessarily a party only show, as I've said, it's my show, and I'm a member of the party, and some people would say that some of my views are not completely libertarian, but I believe that my views are more libertarian than any other party, and so I work with the Libertarian Party. Uh, so, looking at what happened last week, which I kind of wanted to talk about, didn't really get much of a chance to. There were some other ideas that were put forth, and those ideas were interesting, and I was glad to talk about them. But I would also like to discuss this today, and that is that tonight, as in New Hampshire, as PorcFest continues, and many libertarians are having a good time at PorcFest. And if you're wondering what PorcFest means, it means the Porcupine Festival in New Hampshire. And no, they don't eat porcupines. Believe it or not, this actually came up the other day. Someone was talking about, do you eat? I've never had porcupine, and it's like, good. If you go to PorcFest, you also will not have porcupine. The porcupines are the people at the PorcFest, and they do not like to be eaten. Well, all right. Anyway, so looking at the schism, or basically this whole process, what happened, and I know some people know what happened. The only reason we're really going through it isn't because I feel like everybody needs to know about it, like we're a news topic or something, but it's more going through it so that people understand, so that when I make my statements, they understand what I'm talking about. So there was a schism in New Hampshire that was caused basically when the chair decided that she was not pleased with the social media because they were posting things like John McCain's brain cancer did more, or no, John McCain's tumor did more, saved more lives than Fauci. Statements like that. Ridiculously trolling and aggressive. And so did I not write her name down? I did not write her name down. In the schism, the chair decided that she didn't want to be part of that, and I'm guessing because of the numbers. I don't exactly understand why a decision was made to not try and change the social media. I'm guessing that there was no other options because the rest of the board was of the opinion that was fine, or I really don't know. That's one of the things that I guess they're going to be investigating. Anyway, I'm so basically what happened was she asked for, somebody suggested that instead of just resigning, she could form her own separate party. So she wrote a letter, sent it, and then was able to get a piece of paperwork and then tried to form her own party, her own New Hampshire party. So there were two New Hampshire Libertarian parties. After 2 nights of fairly heavy debate, including I can't remember if that happened. I'm trying to go through all the order, but anyway, basically, then you had Joseph Bishop Henchman resigned, who was the chair of the Libertarian Party, or the LNC. Tucker Coburn, also on the board of the LNC, and Francis Wendt of the LNC all resigned. Then the Pragmatist Caucus dissolved. City Clerk Sasha Cohen then resigned, quoting, we are a big tent party, but not that. No tent is big enough to hold racists and people of color, transphobes and trans people, bigots, and their victims. Joseph Henchman was had given a letter to, I should put that out, had given a letter to the new chair of this new party, and so that was brought up. At the time, the national secretary, Karen Ann Haros, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, because she might come on here and tell me, which is fine. She did her due diligence, in my mind, and tried to find out what was going on, why those decisions were made. Also at the time, the LNC was holding on to the all of the data and CRM and various things from New Hampshire. So this was a big issue, basically. And that's why Bishop Henchman resigned. And it's also said that that's one of the reasons why people went to try and remove Karen Ann Haros. 2 reasons. One being that being disruptive during the meetings, and also, I guess, being disruptive using her podcast. And I want to talk about that for sure. We're going to talk about that tonight. And in fact, it was very awkward because during the last meeting, every time that somebody would say, well, the reason you're trying to get rid of her is because she's a whistleblower, the board would get very, very loud and try and shut down the audience, which was very strange and off-putting. There's a very good article in Reason Magazine that I'm referencing, mostly for the history. And so basically the crux of it from both sides is that the one side reached in when they shouldn't have and got involved in the New Hampshire politics when they shouldn't have done that they should not have interfered or worked towards a schism, that's not the job of the LNC. The other group is basically along messaging like this, and we can't have racists in the party, and we have to do something about that. Now, I've described both of those. And in fact, when I saw Bishop Henchman's resignation, it was said that he shouldn't have said those things about those people. So I'm going to repeat myself so that people aren't confused or aren't going to mince my words somehow. I am saying that one group sees it this way, the other group sees it this way. I am not validating either group at this time. In fact, I think that both groups are equally ugly and both smell bad. So I know I'm going to get some friends and influence people tonight with what I'm talking about. And I get that. That's fine. I can live with that. The reality is using things that are striking to get our message across is not bad. We don't have to say things that are offensive and against our principles. But at the same time, we don't have that. The idea of plodding along and trying to reach out to trying to make the least waves so that they'll let us get in the car is not exactly the best plan either in my mind. I think that if we can make a good case of our values and find like-minded people that have those values and bring them into the party, I think that is great. I'm going to use an example of the wrestling caucus. The wrestling caucus I could go to all the different wrestling shows and get tons of libertarians that were part of my wrestling caucus. But at the end of the day, they might only be interested in wrestling. And because of that, they're not really going to do anything else besides things about wrestling, and that's not necessarily going to move us forward as a party. So there really is a question of if the rubber is going to meet the road, and that's the thing that I'm looking at with everything. Now, one thing we've seen is we know that the Mrs. Caucus is able to get votes out there, but what we haven't seen is how many candidates they've been able to get out there. It's great that they can organize the party, but can they get people elected? Now, I know there's members of the party that have done really well with that. Like I know that there are members of the Mrs. Party that are very effective, and I don't want to disparage them at all. I'm just saying, just as a group, the Mrs. Caucus seems very effective at being able to organize and get control of central committees. And that is good. And actually, I could see that working on the county level for sure. But I'm just looking at, I don't know about what we've been doing in the past. I mean, yes, we were able to get Gary Johnson. Yes, that got us a lot of votes. Didn't get him elected, though. Nothing we've done we haven't got a presidential candidate elected, but if we can get more of the smaller candidates elected, that's valuable. I think all in all, infighting isn't going to help. And I don't agree with racism, but I also very much don't. I think that we have to follow our rules at the same time. Just because you see something that's questionable, statements that are questionable, methods that are questionable, I don't think you can just break your principles just because those things are questionable. I know some people are going to disagree with me. That's fine. And you can come on the show and disagree with me. There's some people that I very much admire, and at the same time, I see I don't completely agree with the way that they're going about things. One thing that I thought was interesting is someone said, I see what's going on in the party, and I want to get out. And I was like, I see what's going on in the party, and I think I need to definitely figure out a way to renew my membership, even though it's going to be difficult to do, because I think people need to fight for the party. I think, honestly, that there is an element that maybe the Mrs. Caucus themselves don't notice. And, sometimes that happens where you start attracting a certain group or that might have ideas that aren't your ideas, that might see things in a way that you're not necessarily selling them. And suddenly, you're leading people that are not exactly the people you want to take to your house for dinner. I've been in situations like that myself. I had a friend who just turned out to be really not someone that I wanted to be around. Started out, we were working on an Irish club, and then suddenly he wanted to tear everything down, and he was just a bigot. But I'm not saying that the messaging is necessarily working towards getting that in the Mrs. Caucus. I don't think that's the case. I think that all of us need to come together and figure out how we're going to work together. And also, I will say this, that if it is your intent to run me out, it is my intent to stay. And I have absolutely no qualms with building an organization to make sure that I do so. I mean, that's the answer, right? I mean, in any kind of political party, if somebody is going to say, if their threat is, we will get rid of you in Reno, my response is, well, if you have the votes, because there's nothing stopping me from trying my hand, and then we just, like old gunfighters, throw down. Fine with that. Some people might be like, well, now, Frank, you're a dialysis patient. And, I'm like, yeah. It'll probably suck if you get beat by a dialysis patient. And I haven't been threatened. I haven't seen anybody be threatened exactly. I saw a response that I thought was a little weird. Somebody was trying to explain what they thought was the case. And it's kind of funny because I've been kind of in defense of Karen Ann Haros, and she just did come down on that particular post on Facebook specifically like a ton of bricks. And I don't think that was necessary. It was very strange. But it is what it is, I guess. Now, talking about that, one of the things that keeps being brought up is Josh Smith's podcast and Karen Ann Harris's podcast. And I don't hear anything about Larry, but then again, Larry, I don't think sits on any committees that I know of. He might in his state in New York. I'm not really sure. He hasn't really chimed in on this either, which I thought was interesting. Unless maybe I missed it, but I don't think he has. But I was going to say that I think that someone having a podcast is a good thing. Someone connecting directly to the membership is a good thing. Using different forms of media to get our message across and being effective at that is a good thing. Telling people that, oh, you have a podcast, so you shouldn't talk about these things on your podcast because that's not becoming of a member or whatever. Well, you can stuff that. You can stuff that. I'm polite, so I'm not going to tell you where. You can figure it out. You put it under the cushion of your couch. I am saying, like, if you got views, if you got numbers, and those numbers are translatable to getting people active and voting and thinking in a liberty-minded way, that's awesome. If the message is bad, that's one thing. If people are saying things that are hurtful, that's one thing, but that's not the medium. Having a podcast, talking on Twitter, talking on Facebook, using those mediums to get the message across is good. Connecting with people is good. Being honest is good. I mean, I don't think there's a need to be abrasive, but I think that I think sometimes people get honesty and abrasive mixed up. I know sometimes my father was a little bit more abrasive than he needed to be because he was honest. I always try to be, I'm honest, but I try not to be so abrasive that it's uncomfortable for people. I think there's ways to say things you don't have to say. And you don't have to swear at everybody. That's not necessary. I swear, but I try not to swear every other word. I will, and if you've seen Black and White, then you know that it's something that I'm not afraid to engage in, but it's not something that I'm really I'm worried about or whatever. So I just thought I would say all that. Oh, that's right. So to wrap things up, I wanted to talk about good old Joe. Once again, thank you for the money 2 times. That helped me out. Appreciate that, Joe. But, that was kind of, some of that was preset, I guess. Or did he? No, he only paid me the 14. So I guess just thank him once and then, okay. Anyway, the only problem with that is, of course, the deficit, or well, the debt, the amount of debt that this has caused has been amazing. There were billion-dollar bills. Was it trillion? I think it was billion. Can't remember how big that bill was. That bill was massive. Actually, you know what? I think it was a $1 trillion bill. I think One of them was trillion and one was billion. Anyway, so much money spent on this pandemic and everything that's been done. And then we found out that it's not necessarily how it's working. And I don't know. I still lean on the side of medical, but I kind of have no choice because I have doctors I have to listen to, and have to kind of trust, because I go into a clinic and they, they take care of me, and I have to listen to kind of what they're saying, and so it's that kind of a thing. It's I honestly don't know sometimes, but we do what we can. But going back to Joe, he's talking about weapons of mass destruction and saying, well, you don't need a gun because a gun's not going to protect you from a nuclear warhead. And so this brings up the case. So Second Amendment doesn't say, it says, the right to keep and bear arms, and it doesn't, there's no quantifiable thing. It doesn't say, you can only have this type of gun. That's not in the Bill of Rights. So if the idea of being able to keep and bear arms is actually to protect ourselves from government overreach, which has been mentioned quite a few times, then it seems to me that we need some better things to do that. So I'm going to need maybe we do need some anti-aircraft or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what stops a nuclear weapon. I don't necessarily think we should each have nuclear weapons, but I mean, the Second Amendment, it's not off the table. It's not off the table. Some of the stuff is jokes, folks, so don't take it all too seriously. And everybody enjoy your weekend. And let's all be peaceful and groovy. And also go on to my store and buy a shirt on tpublic/stores/gamingfix, GAMING-FIXX. And we have curated shirts. You can support Gaming Fix. Eventually, we'll probably have some time to be reasonable shirts. And thanks for tuning in, everybody.